We're here tonight for the annual meeting of the Community Aging Network of Brookline. And it's an exciting, fun affair. We have a couple speakers who are going to provide some insight in some of the issues that seniors face here in Brookline and elsewhere. And I'm looking forward to what they have to say.
The Brookline BCAN is a great organization. It's kind of a self-help collaboration among seniors, but they're always, I'm sure the selectmen currently get this, but when I was on the board, they were always knocking on my door to tell me about streets that weren't properly cleared of snow and ice, the sidewalks, and more benches needed along sidewalks, and various issues, lighting, so that the sidewalks were, safe at night for seniors so they wouldn't trip and things. So they kind of look out for any issue that might be senior related.
Well, I've been part of the project that's getting awarded tonight. Ever since I got elected to the select board in 2017, I took over for Nancy Daly, who was the chair of the Kent Street Senior Affordable Housing Committee. That was created based on a warrant article that was before town meeting, I believe in the fall of 2016, that asked town meeting to look at turning the air rights above our municipal parking lots into senior affordable housing while simultaneously maintaining the public parking at grade. So a committee was convened with a lot of stakeholders, a lot of former select people, and a current member of the select board. And so when I got elected and took over for Nancy, I took over one of the committees, which happened to be the Kent Street Committee. So over 2 years, we looked at the site and we looked at feasibility. And now we're moving forward with a RFP, which is a request for proposals. We got 3 proposals from developers, mostly mission-based developers. And so we might actually build something on the site, which is located near the Brookline Village T-stop in Brookline Village, between Station Street and Kent Street.
So that's an interesting question. I serve on the Joint Committee on Aging at the State House, and so we think about issues affecting older adults across the state. And an interesting one that's come up recently is this phenomenon where, on the one hand, we want to keep the cost of providing care for older adults down. On the other hand, we force salaries for care workers so low that experienced providers of care are leaving their job to go work at Starbucks. And so we're losing out on the talent and the real skill that's built up over years, to say nothing of the trust that the recipients have built up. And so one thing we're struggling with at the state level is how to bring wages up for providers of care so that the best and most capable providers of care can earn a living wage and an honest wage at a job that they love, that we so desperately need, which is helping our older adults remain comfortable, remain cared for, regardless of where their physical, mental, or emotional state happens to be today.
But the other thing that the town of Brookline has sponsored is Brookline Green Electricity, which is a program that provides people automatically with electricity that's 25% greener than the supply that comes from Eversource. And it's automatic in the sense that more than a year ago, anyone that read the information and didn't do anything automatically got green energy, which in certain cases turned out to be cheaper than the regular electricity. People the option of choosing to have less green electricity. Very few people would do that. And now we're also talking to people about how for a few dollars more a month they can have 100% green electricity, which is the single most important thing, really. It's the single easiest thing people can do to green their carbon footprint.
Well, I think it would be great if the public recognizes the importance of seniors and the importance of this building and this center to senior life. It's always very robust, crowded. The programming is always hefty. The people are always downstairs. Every time I come, it's a very robust and joyful place in many ways. But we need more space, and so hopefully the public will be willing to help us fund space for an expansion of the senior center, because it's so important to the lives of the people in this town. And we're getting more and more seniors every day. We have new developments, senior housing developments opening here. Someone just reminded me that apparently in the United States, over 10,000 people turned 65 today. So that's a pretty astonishing number. And as a senior myself, I'm, incredibly committed to senior issues. And I'll also say the senior community has done a lot for Brookline, better lighting, advocacy for better lighting, advocacy for benches. Everyone can use benches. So I think, there are many ways in which we've also contributed to the life of the town. I sit in town meeting, and there are many, many seniors in town meeting. So we're giving the fact that we've retired, but we're giving of our time and our energy to make the town a better place for everyone.
Well, we're working with the scooter companies to set up means to have the scooters located after they're used in specific locations and not be left around the town and various places they shouldn't be, as well as another issue related to this. I don't mean to pick on scooters, but that's one issue that we're facing here in town. Another issue is scooter riders who ride on sidewalks, and we've made an effort to both reach out to the scooter company and insist that they address these issues, as well as spreading the word to the scooter user community that this is unacceptable and that creates dangerous situations for especially elderly, but also other people. And I think since the initiation of the pilot program, we've seen changes to the way in which people using scooters avoid sidewalks and use them in a way that's that's proper. So
there's a huge number. The ones that Frank Harrow has been speaking with me about more closely involve transportation, both the act of moving and the act of pausing. So in terms of the act of moving, there's TRIPS, which is a multifaceted program designed to help older adults, regardless of where their physical abilities happen to be today, get from here to there safely, comfortably, timely. And then the other half of that is, for all of us, but particularly for older adults who are walking from here to there, taking a break is an important part of it. And so the additional benches that have been put along major pedestrian areas so that folks, young and old alike, can just take a breath and check your phone or look around and enjoy the scenery. That's also really important, and I'm glad that the Senior Center and BCAN and the Council on Aging and other organizations have really been able to push that forward.
Well, I think that it's important to recognize we have a lot of transportation needs. because we're getting to the age now where we're not driving as much, or we should be cutting back, and we need very good forms of transportation, and we don't really have it. And the senior center is a little bit far from the train for many people to walk, but we, the Boston area in general could use better transportation, but seniors in particular, especially for those who can't afford it. So who can't afford Ubers and Lyfts, et cetera. So that's one thing I would like the public to know. There's a dire need for new transportation and a dire need for affordable housing. We are getting some affordable housing nearby, but it's in essence a drop in the bucket. It's a great first step, but we need to accelerate and do more.
Well, the other thing that people should look for, perhaps, they'll notice, is that the town of Brookline already has installed a number of charging stations for electric vehicles and is installing more in the coming year on Beacon Street. And for people that do drive, particularly in an urban environment, people can either buy a fully electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid cars with a program that's run by the Green Energy Consumers Alliance, can be adjusted no more expensive than a gas guzzling car, and make a big difference that way.
I guess two things. One, I would love for this committee to be a model for how we can work with abutters and the community, especially the immediate community, to get their buy-in and support for building something that they're going to have to look at. One of the biggest comments that we got through the process was that parking lot is a major cut-through for pedestrian traffic. So to maintain that cut-through with whatever is proposed to be built is very important to the community, that parcel doesn't get completely shut off because it's such an important way to get to the T. We're hoping that a lot of public space is created on that site. We're even imagining reuse of the stones that are part of the facade of the staircase that comes down onto Station Street, and we're hoping that it's a better open space and green space for the rest of the community. And then also we can look at our other lots and see whether or not this makes sense for other parcels that we own.
Well, one of the things we're working on right now that's kind of exciting, but also a little scary, is the People Next Door, which is Center Communities of Brookline, it's an organization that's a part of the Hebrew Rehab Facility. It's one part of the same umbrella group runs them, and they do some affordable housing for seniors, and some is senior type housing with like services, for people that may need some help. And they are talking about building a whole new high-rise building in between their two current buildings that they have. And we have been talking with them about that if we could do some private fundraising, we could maybe have some floor of their building or something like that for the senior center, because right now there's so many seniors coming to classes, especially sort of morning, early afternoon. If you come here, you can't even find a quiet place to sit down. It's full. People are enjoying themselves in all the classes.
So there are two people that I mentioned earlier, but they're key to this effort, involvement, groups for a very long time. Ruth Ann Dobek, the head of the Senior Center, and co-chair of Brookline CAN, and Frank Carroll, co-chair of Brookline CAN. So they would like to say a few words, and they would like to, we have a few awards to hand out to a few of our partners that we'd like to honor today. Ruth Ann, Frank?
I just want to take a couple of moments for two things. I mean, first, Matt acknowledged the people who contributed to the planning of this event, but I particularly want to recognize Elmer Parker, for her contributions in chairing the committee this year. Eleanor has not been a part of the process in previous years, so the fact that she provided effective leadership is particularly notable contribution. I also want to underscore what John said about our need for more people to get involved. I should say I chair the local community advocacy committee, and we really need to have people who will come forward, who will be a part of that committee and help us develop issues that we're going to work on, do some research on them, and then kind of really be part of the heart and soul of the committee. One of the things I can say about the committee, it is a vehicle through which a number of people have really learned quite a lot about how the town works, and they have it's really kind of enabled them to be effective participants in the political process here in Brookline. So I really want to encourage people to become part of that. Roseanne?
Thanks. We all have heard that expression, it takes a village to raise a child. And indeed, it takes an entire community to provide the dignity and maintain that lifestyle for our older adults. And we are so fortunate in Brookline to have a community that cares and comes together, from nonprofit organizations to businesses, to our select board, to all the committees. And Brookline CAN's theme of networking, you can too, is so essential to providing solutions to some problems that are incredibly daunting without that entire community. And this evening for our awards, we've selected 3 themes of problems or needs that are incredibly daunting without the entire community's help. And those are climate change, transportation, and affordable housing. Just think about those 3 important, essential needs that we're trying to address as an entire nation. And then it comes down to a community saying, what can we do? How can we achieve this? Affordable housing. We use the statistic that we estimate 2,000 units are needed in order to provide the stock for our growing baby boomers and elders. And I like to quote that the last building that was created for elder housing was 190 Harvard Street back in the 80s. That is a stock that needs incredible amount of attention. How does one do affordable housing unless you are taking an entire community? Transportation. For most seniors, that always comes up as number 1 and 2. We're dealing with changing dynamics, a cab industry that is in decline, new programs that leave seniors without smartphones, with no alternatives, and a community, a town that has said for the last 30 years, we can't afford to do any new programming around transportation. And climate, what can I say? We're going to see tomorrow the students expressing their concern 2050 is our task force. These needs are enormous. So those are the needs. And we've achieved so much this last year. And that's what these awards are. So the first award is for affordable housing. We have the potential on the Kent Street, Station Street lot for 45 to 50 units of affordable housing. That came from an idea and hard work. So our first award goes to the Kent Street, Station Street group, and Heather Hamilton's here to take that award. Heather, please come forward.
It does take a village.
And with that, we hopefully will see more development happening. Our neighbors to Life did their groundbreaking last Friday. They hope to be open next September with 62 units. Our neighbors of Center Communities and Heber Senior Life is looking at creating more affordable and housing options. There's 2 community meetings planned for that, one tomorrow and one on Monday. We've heard, of course, that Newberry College also has an option for senior housing, so a lot happening. So success to affordable housing. On transportation, as I said, an unbelievable need where it's so hard to keep the money and the sustainability of projects. For years, Frank and I have tried to get this community to respond to some of that urgent need for an increase in funding and sustainability. And we're so pleased that our transportation board has recommended with us that Uber and Lyft pay a 10-cent tax back to the town, and we are proposing funding of our Effective Trips program and pilot programs to provide even more transportation options. So we have a representative from the Transportation Board. Jonathan is present. Please come and accept the award on behalf of transportation. And again, a special shout out, I don't know if Tommy Patol is still in the building. Tommy has also taken on transportation as one of his pet projects. So again, from the elected officials down to the volunteers, it's all essential. And then finally, but of course, most daunting, is the issue of climate change. We've made such huge progress in town. We have Zoe Lynn aboard as our project manager. We have goals in the town. This group started so many years ago and have been leading the charge and getting all of us involved, active, committed, and doing things. So is it Warner Lowe here? Warner, please come up and accept our award for climate change. Of course.
Ruth Ann mentioned a moment ago that there is a young people's-led climate strike forum. And I don't know if any of you are as lucky as me to be retired and have a little more time in your hands than you used to. But tomorrow from 11:30 to 1 at Government Center, there is going to be an assembly of people, and the more people that come, the more politicians are going to listen. So I hope if there is anybody that is retired and has a little bit of time in their hands tomorrow, it's going to be a beautiful day. Come on down to Government Center.
inspired by John and Frank's call to action, please, if affordable housing, transportation, or climate, or any one of the other livable community efforts interest you, please join our network. We can change the world. We have to, we will. Thank you.
Okay, we're done. We're very lucky in Brookline, and one of my favorite, certainly, stations and radio stations and podcasts, etc., is located actually in Brookline. It's WBUR. And we have two people that I think you recognize their associations and what they do from BUR, and we're asking each one to speak separately. Karen Schiffman and Carrie Goldberg. We'll start with Karen Schiffman. I'll just introduce her. Karen is the executive producer for On Point and has been that since 2001 when it got started. She's been on the program since 2001. She produced the coverage of 4 Democratic and Republican conventions. She's also she's got more than 10 years as a TV producer, separate from that, with WCVB TV and WBZ TV, and her education, which her education is a master's in Harvard and Barnard College graduate. Karen. So just before Karen begins, as a fan, I have been dying to hear a description of On Point, how it chooses its subjects, how it plans its day, and how it does its job.
Okay, can everyone hear me, or do I need to? Priscilla says no. Okay, so thanks for having me, and it's great to be here. And I see some very familiar faces. My neighbor, my Weight Watchers group, and most importantly, my best friend's mother. So Norma, this is for you. That's fine. So how does the show get put together? Let me start with my day just for a few minutes. When the alarm goes up at 4:45 a.m. every day, then I bounce out of bed, put the kettle on, take a shower, and then by around 5 a.m. I'll say these words: Alexa, play WBUR. And that's my soundtrack as I'm making my lunch, making my breakfast, and getting ready to dash out the door by 6 a.m. at the latest. I'm at my desk because I'm living in Brookline, very close by. I moved back to Brookline specifically for that reason. And I'm at my desk by 6:15, 6:20 every day. And that's when I start reading the wires, reading the papers, going online, my favorite websites, the Washington Post, blah, 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 blah. We have a story meeting producers start rolling in around 7. That's my quiet time before then. And they roll in around 7 and we talk about what do we have scheduled for today? Does it hold up? Do we need to tweak it? You know, this Iran thing, should we carve out maybe 8 minutes at the end of the hour to talk about that? So we are updating that show and evaluating that show in real time as we head to air. Because for me, 10 o'clock is a lifetime away. And at 9:15 I could be saying, no, we still don't have that reporter we want, but let's just put out more calls. So it's a very dynamic, it's fluid. And as I said today, when we wanted to start the conversation off with one guest, but there were tech problems and we started off with the other, the audience has no idea how we had it planned ahead of time. They only know what they hear, and hopefully most of the time they like what they're hearing. So when I was thinking about what to talk about to all of you, On Point's a conversation, and I think that's what we're all kind of looking for. It's a national conversation, sometimes a global conversation, about big issues and things that are just fun sometimes. So today, in the first hour, we talked about climate change. In hour 2, we talked about what happens after cancer treatment, because it's not so easy after you ring the bell saying, hooray, I did it. There could be medical complications, psychological complications, and we had a conversation about that. On Point is the only live call-in show in the entire NPR network, which is kind of mind-boggling, because when you turn on the radio, as I do a lot on Saturday morning, there's all those sports call-in shows, and on AM radio, there's all kinds of call-in shows, the host talking to the people. Public radio doesn't really do that great a job with it, and On Point is its only vehicle to do that. And what we do every day is connect experts and real people. And the real people participate in a whole myriad of ways. And that's sort of changing as the ways that we all connect is changing. So you can call us on the phone. And if you're lucky, you can get in. I apologize. I know we're sometimes a little harsh on the phone. Got your point. Sorry, we're not taking it next. Because there's a reason. We're not rude. It's because we're looking for differing views. We know who's already put that point up in the queue. We already have a caller who's going to say that. We're looking for geography. And we're really looking to have a diversity of opinions. And that's part of, I think, the great things about the show is that you hear from all sides. And one of the things that I always sort of really revel in is that everyone feels like they can call. People from red states and blue states, all over the political spectrum. We have a big, diverse population of people that call in. And I think that's what I think we want to be doing in this country more of. Everyone just having a civil conversation. So people call in. And we also we'll take your comments on Twitter, on Facebook. So social media is now a big thing. People will send us their comments, the host will read them on the air. There's a whole community that's just dueling it out online on our homepage on the web. And the thing that's kind of interesting is that while you may be listening to On Point from live 10 to noon, or you may be listening to us 7 p.m. at night when it replays, stations air the show at different daytimes all over the country. So some people air 1 in the afternoon, 2, 4 to 6, blah, blah, blah. So there's this whole conversation that continues after the show is over. When I start looking at our Twitter comments or the Facebook comments, people are talking well past noon because they're experiencing the show at a different time. But there's still a way to connect with the show and with each other. And I think that's what we all really want to do, is we want to connect. We want to be able to talk about things that are hard. We want to be able to share our experiences. We want to challenge the so-called experts. We have this wonderful caller, Carl from Nashville, and I had the great opportunity of meeting him once. I'll tell you about that in a sec. And he gets on the phone, and you have a Nobel Prize-winning economist, blah, 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 lays out some great theory. And then Carl joins us. Carl's calling from Nashville. Carl, what's on your mind? And Carl says, I don't know about that. I just don't see it that way. Or that's not how it's going on where I live. And he'll just give this soliloquy, this really eloquent, soaring thing about what this Nobel Prize winner is wrong. And we did the show from Nashville. We travel sometimes and do these fundraising things. And I said, I really want to invite Carl from Nashville. I have this image of what he would be. But that's the difference between radio and television. In radio, you can imagine, often incorrectly, what someone's going to look like in person. And TV, you always know. And so I was very excited to meet Carl from Nashville, which was the high point of going there for me. And then he appeared. Rasta kind of haircut, he's 55, African-American, his wife says we've given him the biggest ego, and he runs like one of these 1-800 junk things. He has a junkyard. And he's like the citizen philosopher, and there's lots of people like that. And a lot of the conversations we have, sometimes they're uncomfortable, and sometimes they're surprising. And it's a good check-in on what people are really feeling. So one of the many shows we did on the travel ban, at least half of the people that called us said they supported it. They're public radio listeners. So who listens, who the audience is, I don't think that people necessarily have a handle on it. Yes, they may read the New Yorker, they may not. Not everyone I know reads the New Yorker either, but we are able to sort of pull together all these different strands of people to talk. And that's kind of what we do. And I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking for ways to kind of feel less isolated. And I know Carrie's going to talk more about some of the things that initiatives that we're doing over at WBUR, but On Point is a small way of getting us all to sort of come together as one, at least for maybe 2 hours a day.
Questions until after both. However, I really appreciate that. I remember reading Tom Friedman's book when he talked about the parking lot attendant and his philosophy. And it took his guidance to a major book and major effort from his daily activities with the parking lot attendant. I can imagine. Next. Carrie Goldberg. Carrie Goldberg is the editor and BUR's editor of BUR's Common Health, as we probably all know. She covers the health, medicine, and science for both BUR on the air and WBUR.org. She used to be the Boston bureau chief of the New York Times. She was a staff Moscow correspondent for the LA Times. And health science reporter for Boston Globe. You've heard of that one. She was a Knight Science Journalist fellow at MIT, and she was graduated summa cum laude from Yale and did graduate work at Harvard. Carrie's a co-author. I had to say this. Co-author of what's called a triple memoir, and I'm reading the entire name. 3 Wishes. True story of good friends, crushing heartbreak, and astonishing luck on our way to love and motherhood. I want to read that. So I'd like to bring Carrie on and welcome her.
You know you're getting older when you can't remember the subtitle of your own book. Thank you. And also, I'd just like to note I came a very long way to get here, a whole block. And if anyone knows the corner of Center and Williams, there's a little free library around the corner. That's mine. So please drop off a book or take a look if you pass by. Can you hear me okay in the back? You hear me in the back? Yeah. Okay. Great. Our slides. So Karen took care of the national part of WBUR. I would add that we have a couple of other really big national shows, Here and Now, which is from 12 to 2 here, and that is the national daytime show for NPR in that time slot. And we also do a sports show called Only a Game that's on weekends. But I'm here as kind of a representative of the local newsroom, which has been growing really a lot over the last few years. And it's this really surprising phenomenon that as newspapers have been just imploding, I mean, newspaper staffs have basically been cut in half over the last decade or two, public radio has been doing just fine. And who would ever have thought that the business model where you just nag people and say, please give us some money if you could afford it, and then help support us so that other people can hear us, that combined with underwriting and development and so on, has actually allowed us to be spared the devastation that newspapers have undergone as their business model collapsed in the era of Craigslist and online advertising. So I've actually been witnessing this sort of shift in the media landscape in Boston and nationally, with the exception of the New York Times and the Washington Post are doing fine, but otherwise, and the Wall Street Journal, but otherwise newspapers are in big trouble, while NPR has been holding strong, and in fact, I think becoming more and more of a source of news for everybody. And actually, I thought of when Karen mentioned the Nashville guy, NPR really, it does bring everybody together. Like, one amazing statistic is, even though the NPR audience is probably the most educated audience in media, there's a statistic that 1/3 of the people who listen to NPR believe the world was God created the world in 6 days. So that really gives you a sense of the span of the audience. And the more that we get sort of locked into our own bubbles, I think the more important that is to have shows like On Point that actually cross over. So in the local newsroom, we have also seen a change recently in that we're growing our reporting with a lot of development money. So part of how the business model is changing, and you've seen this in all kinds of newspapers and other media outlets, is that we depend more and more on donations, not the little donations that public radio has always depended on, but big donations from big donors. And so WBUR recently has gotten big donations for investigative reporting. We have a great big new environment team. We've really expanded our arts reporting. So public radio is trying to step into the voids that are being left by some of the collapse of newspapers. So for example, the arts reporting in WBUR is seen partly as a replacement for the Phoenix that went away, which was really sad. Environment, it's just the most important story in the world. We've got it, and there are a lot of really passionate donors who are supporting our environment reporting, and investigative also in this political era. It's just more and more important. So that's what we're seeing. We like to boast that we're the largest radio newsroom in New England, which isn't actually saying all that much, but at least it's a robust newsroom that is growing. So I run Common Health, which is our health, medicine, and science vertical. Vertical is just an area of a website. And I did start my career in Moscow back when the Cold War made Soviet-American relations seem like the most important thing in the world. And after I covered the collapse of the Soviet Union, I kind of looked around for what I should do next, because it was really time to go home. And I decided that I really thought science and medicine and technology actually were just simply the most important things happening in the world. And I have a couple of favorite inspirational quotes that I brought to explain why. So there was a great futurist named Stuart Brand. He created the Whole Earth catalog and the Well. And this is what he says: science is the only news. When you scan through a newspaper, all the human interest stuff is the same old he said, she said, the politics and economics, the same sorry cyclic drama. Even the tech is predictable if you know the science. Human nature doesn't change much. Science does, and the change accrues, altering the world irreversibly. So that's why I made the shift, even though I didn't have much of a science background. And I feel like it's actually new. I mean, crime and politics, they just go around and around, they don't change that much, but when you figure out, for example, how to decipher DNA, that's new, that changes the human condition. Similarly with technology, everyone living on a smartphone is a change in the whole fabric of our human condition. And so that's why I went into this area. And I have one other little inspirational quote. This was the faculty chair of MIT, Suchi Gopal, who said recently, unlocking the information in genomes has been the defining scientific revolution of the past quarter century. And part of what makes me want to particularly report on life science is that I compared that to, there was a recent survey result that found that 80% of Americans support mandatory labels on food containing DNA. Now, everything living contains DNA. So it's the sense that there's so much information, there's so much use for more correct scientific information to be spread around in society. So what I try to do on Common Health is basically threefold. I try to capture or to do justice to the fact that here in Boston, we are living in the biomedical capital of the world. If you take the hospitals, the biotech companies, the universities, and you put them all together in this incredible synergy, that's what Boston, to me, is about basically more than anything else. And part of what I love about Brookline is I feel like more than anything, we're kind of an annex of Longwood and Kendall Square at this point. And this place that has always been very educated and brainy is becoming even more so. It's really, it's amazing. So I try to do the biomedical ecosystem. I try to cover healthcare, the biggest topic in the presidential campaign season, just the biggest topic, the sort of biggest kitchen table topic, I think, for all of America now at this point. And then I also try to cover personal health, which I would distill down to, look, just exercise and eat fruits and vegetables, please. Like that's sort of, it all basically comes down to that. And so many of the problems in the American healthcare system come down to the fact that our lifestyles are worse than other countries. So that's basically what I do. And I just wanted to mention, since we're on the theme of network, as Matt said, I did want to mention also this amazing new space at WBUR called City Space. So for anyone who doesn't know, WBUR is at the corner of St. Paul and Commonwealth Avenue. And we got, speaking of great big donations, we got a great big donation to create what is fundamentally a place for civic engagement, discussion, but it also has all kinds of performances. I think last night was Philip Glass, and this past weekend was Brookline historian Ken Liss talking with Sharon Brody, another Brookline resident, about the auto mile that used to be on Commonwealth Ave. So it's an amazing resource for the community, and I think it would be a natural thing for people to just keep track of what's going on there. Some things are free, some are cheap, but it's a new piece of what WBUR does, and I think it came from the conviction that in the era that we're living in now, where more and more we interact virtually, that face-to-face interaction is just absolutely irreplaceable. It becomes more and more valuable. And I was looking at recently, there's a book, people know that Steven Pinker is this amazing Harvard professor here. He has a sister, Susan Pinker, who wrote a book called The Village Effect, How Face-to-Face Contact Can Make Us Healthier and Happier. And so there's all kinds of research now about how important it is to have face-to-face. It's all the stuff about loneliness as an epidemic, and face-to-face interaction is irreplaceable. And so I was just especially pleased to be invited to this because it's exactly what that's talking about, right? That here everyone is actually in a space together and interacting, and there is no substitute for that. And Matt, my price for coming here is, and related to that, I have 1 minute of ranting, which is that how many people here are on the Brookline Facebook groups? Yeah, a few people. So I just feel like they're getting more and more toxic. And the reason they're getting so toxic is because people are interacting virtually instead of face-to-face. Because so many of the things that we say to each other, we would never say if we were talking face-to-face. And I don't know exactly what's to be done about it, but I feel like it's a real challenge facing the town at this point. Because on the one hand, it brings the community together, but on the other hand, it pollutes it, and it makes it much less pleasant. And so I just leave you with that challenge. We've got to do something about this, because it's just too much. Thank you.
I have 30 seconds for questions. Thank you so much. You hit just about, I don't even have any left. I've got, except to reinforce everything you said. I mean, my reaction to both of you was you did exactly what I might have hoped. Is you reached out physically to people, you reached out social media to people, you reached out through the radio, through calling, through face-to-face. You hit everything and showed us some of the impacts of it. And I would really like everybody to recognize City Space is there. I went to one event there, I plan to go to more. It was really good. I mean, it was local, but it was people from all over coming together and being able to both watch things, see things, and talk. So please do it. Now, we have a really important thing, 50-50 raffle. And we need to do a drawing. So I'm going to ask a person holding, unless they're gone, I mean, if all the Tickets are gone. It's easy. Karen Fisher, our 50-50 raffle. Would you ask for that, please? Or John? Pull somebody.
I will be glad.
Yeah, come here.
Okay, I have your tickets ready? Okay. The number of the ticket that we're looking for is 2479009.
We took care of the money. We took care of other things. I would really like to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. I'd like to give everybody an opportunity, but I at least want to get one and one more that raises next.
BCAN.
What's that?
Millicent's asking how the raffle helps to support Brookline Camp.
Oh!
Yes.
Well, that's pretty, can I describe it? I guess I can. Half of the raffle goes to the winner, and the other half of the costs of the raffle that everybody put in goes to Brookline CAN and helps fund our basic activities. Brookline CAN, if you look at similar organizations around any place, they're at the levels of $400 or $500, and they give more services, but the services of the senior center, Brookline CAN, everything else provides the same kind of services. But Brookline CAN, as membership, is very low. I mean, I don't know if you know what is it? $35. And in fact, people can get less if they ask. And it's
And that, what we usually use to describe it is that it's the WBUR motto, that our programs are open to everyone, but we seek support, just like the radio.
exactly.
We use you all the time as a.
Everybody has absolute access to everything Brookline CAN does without joining, without contributing, or anything else. But when you contribute, you're part of it. Contribute meaning either your own efforts, which is the best, by the way, and also membership. So, and is you can do. No matter what, you get the benefits. Where the benches are there for all that we were talking about. Any of the activities are there for all. Any other questions? Maybe for Carrie and Karen? Or? Well, no, we have one.
My wife and I are at the. My wife and I are at the stage where we're trying to figure out where we're going to live for the next umpty years. And I would suspect there are a number of people in this room who either have or are planning to sell a large house and move into a smaller abode. What are the touch points for getting good information and advice and experience in that area?
Well, you know, our point of view is that there's no better place for older people to live than Brookline. And one of the things that we do is call attention to good things that Brookline offers. One of the things that we have done is we've been focused on older people who have interest in one-floor living, and we developed an online guide to residential buildings with elevators. So if you're, interested in starting a search for possibilities for living in Brookline downsizing mode and looking for something on one floor, we start with our website and look at, you're looking for a place that's pet friendly and that has 3 bedrooms and a swimming pool. You can find the buildings here in Brookline that offer that.
And I would just add to that, the advice that I often give to people is that searching for housing is very similar to searching for a good college match. When you did it with your children, one campus that was perfect because it was small and intimate is not going to fit for everyone. Another child would be better off at BU, for example, in an urban, and so you kind of have to go through your own personal goals and go visit different sites, and you'll get a feel for and do a checklist, but it's very similar to looking at colleges.
Yes, sure. Can I say who you are?
I'm Bernard Green, Chair of the Select Board here at Brookline. The story about Carl from Nashville I thought was really fascinating. I used to live in Nashville, a very, very blue county. But I'm wondering if you could give us more information about the sort of demographics of your audience, age-wise, location-wise, political orientation-wise, because I think you made the point that your show is an opportunity to speak across the boundaries that we've set up in this country to people who may not be within our own bubbles.
The challenge for answering that is that people listen in so many different ways. So the way I would say is that it's a younger group that listens to it as a podcast. It's an older cohort who tends to listen to it live 10 to noon. You get people that are still pretty much in the workforce. Those are listening, I'm speaking locally, who are driving home from work, 7 to 9 p.m. So I would say the public radio audience is older. It's the average age is 59. We just had a little retreat, so I know this. 59. So it's an older audience, and the efforts that we're making are trying to tap into the challenge is tapping into the younger audience without alienating the people that are your core listeners and the people who are actually giving money is the challenge. And I think that one of the things we think a lot about on the show is, in terms of casting the chairs, as we call it, who's going to be on the show, the guests, making a huge, a daily effort. Is this a diverse enough panel? Sometimes it doesn't work that way because the expert's the expert and you're the one who wrote the piece that you're building it off on. But when we're sort of filling the chairs, are we getting a diverse group of people, both racially, geographically? Those are things that we're very mindful about. I mean, just booking tomorrow's Weekend the News Roundtable, there's like 2.5 days figuring out what do we get? No, it's too similar, same geography, same profile. So sort of a roundabout way of saying that we make bigger efforts now to make the show more inclusive, more diverse, more appealing to the younger demographic. But at this moment, I would argue the facts are that the public radio audience is older. Not quite as old as network television, but it's there.
And that's a little scary because the younger people are all going to podcasts. And so it's concerning. I mean, they don't tend to drive cars as much, and so much radio listening is in cars. And so there is concern that the audience is shrinking. It's shrinking, but at a very slow rate, like 1 or 2% a year. So you guys have to keep listening.
In the podcast, you have podcasts, right?
Yeah,
and you have a blog. Okay.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so podcasts can be on your iPhone or however you want to do it off your computer. It's a way to download a show, which in some cases, in our cases, we just basically shove it up there intact. Some people will carve out, let's say, 20 minutes of the hour-long conversation. The the highlights of it. And you see people walking around with the buds in their ears, they're often listening to a podcast. The challenge for us as a public radio station is that people will grab the podcast, they'll sign up for it. They'll sign up for, this podcast, that podcast, the true crime podcast, blah, blah, blah. And they just download them and they're not thinking about, where did this podcast originate? What was the show? What was the member station from which this came? So they're not loyal donors because they're not making a connection of, I really like On Point, therefore I should make a donation to WBUR. It's just this thing in the feed, and that is a very worrisome challenge for public radio.
People still here. Are there any other questions?
We hear the term affordable, and very often in Brookline, that's affordable for lower income people, but middle income people with CDs of 2% and housing costs, if you don't qualify for that low income thing, are being squeezed. And I hear constant complaints when I go to synagogue from the people at 1550 that don't qualify for that 30% of income that's very high. So I think that we need to expand this concept of affordable for seniors to understand that middle class people are also being priced out of this community and other communities. And I'm a little bit upset that we don't hear more about affordable for middle class seniors, especially in an economy where, unless you're in the stock market or something and gambling, the income has been cut down to 2% or 1.5% on the income that they can get.
So I'll just make a comment. I was at the groundbreaking that was mentioned, I think. It was mentioned earlier, right? The 2 Life groundbreaking, and I believe they made a point. I'm not either speaking for them or swearing to my accuracy. But what I heard them say is there are different levels of affordability in that new, and the whole thing is affordable in some term or other, but there are different levels of affordability, exactly that. Am I right?
Yes. They're trying to address your issue that it will also have for traditionally what we call the middle class. Because you're absolutely right, they get squeezed. And there are a number of other programs for homeowners that we're concerned about, and Brookline CAN has worked to expand the number of people that can participate in something called like the property tax work-off. But your point is well taken and something that we're concerned about.
Right.
The squeeze on people who are not traditionally low income or high income.
Right. I don't know, Roger, do you want to add anything to that? Roger Bloods from the housing.
Right.
I often put those terms in what I would call affordable with a capital.
Roger, explain what your position is.
I chair the Brookline Housing Advisory Board, which is an advisory board appointed mostly by the selectmen on housing policy and affordable housing programs and inclusionary zoning, and the town has an affordable housing trust fund that invests in various types of affordable housing, including the 2 Life communities that just broke ground. But there is a huge gap between the affordable housing programs, which qualify people at below market rates or below market prices. And I often refer to that as affordable housing with a capital A. And there's another whole type of housing, which is affordable housing, which I call affordable housing with a small a, and that's kind of everybody else. And how can they remain in their homes or their communities? And there's a huge gap between what even the middle level of affordable housing is in the capital A and the market in a very high cost area like Brookline. One initiative that we're doing at the moment with the affordable housing with the small A, it won't produce a lot of new units, but some, and very important for the people that fall in a certain situation, and that is homeowners, often long-term homeowners who are finding it hard to remain in town because taxes are going up, low rates on their CDs, and everything else is going up a lot. And they want to age in place. And so we're bringing to town meeting the warrant article, a measure that would legalize what are called accessory dwelling units. So right now, if you have a larger home and somebody asked about downsizing from a large home, it might make it easier to remain actually in that home if one wishes to, because it would become, if this measure passes, legal in the town zoning to carve out a relatively small separate dwelling unit which can be rented if one wants for helping to maintain the property or just one's own living costs, or for companionship or caregiving or adult children coming back, which sometimes is not happening. And so while that isn't going to produce hundreds of new units, it's going to be really important to some long-term owners in town who are concerned about the affordability of remaining here in the town that they love a lot. So.
Thanks, Roger. Should I let people go, or what do you think? Okay, I'll let everybody go. I want to thank again our speakers.